So tonight I want to make sure that we dig into kind of the craft of sound design, because it's something I don't know a whole lot about, and also
Sure.
really curious because you started with a degree that's in recording arts, which I don't know if you did or did not have that one class at Full Sail that was focused on game audio. I can't remember.
It didn't exist yet, so I
Right.
did not.
Right. So you didn't have any like game education, right? So
I would say I was mostly self-taught. But I had all the recording stuff applied in terms of giving me foundations I needed to understand, just the craft of recording and signal flow and how to use the equipment. And the two audio post-production classes I had, excuse me, even though they were geared towards film and television sound, there was still a lot of stuff that translates. It's not an identical job, but that's, there's enough similarities there that I took things from that class that were very useful,
yeah.
or from those two classes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you jump out into the industry, and we talked about how you did a few you did contract jobs at first until you got that first big gig. How do you, like, as you're stepping into the industry to do sound design for games, like, what is that skill set? Like what, just at a basic level for us that aren't too familiar with that side of things, what is it that you provide and that a company that's looking to hire someone would be expecting out of you?
As somebody starting,
Yeah, someone starting, like when you started.
well, I can tell you what it was when I started, but it's very different now compared to then.
I get that.
The expectations are very, very different. When I started, it was, I think the first company I got that really made a commitment and tried to hire me on was just the fact that I showed them that I could get far enough that I wouldn't have to learn completely from scratch when they hired me. That, and they liked my tenacity, I guess. These days, the situation's a bit different. These days, we have, every time anybody puts up a sound designer job listing, they get 100 applicants.
Yeah.
Maybe, and I'm not exaggerating, I swear to you, like maybe 2 to 4 or 5, maybe 5 portfolios are actually worth a callback. That means like 95% of the reels we see just they don't cut it at all. So what they're looking for these days is a couple of things, and it's going to vary by company and size of the team. But generally speaking, they're looking for somebody who, even if they're not an amazing sound designer, they've clearly got the instinct for it. Like if you look at their portfolio, whatever they send you, they're clearly trying to communicate things with their sound. They're trying to reinforce parts of gameplay or part of the narrative. So we're looking for somebody who has the instincts and can do that, versus just plastering sound everywhere or missing really obvious important things. From an implementation perspective, if somebody knows how to get around in Unreal and or Wwise and do some damage, that's great. It keeps us from having to teach them from nothing. Being kind of a power user of whatever DAW you use, that's digital audio workstation. Most game studios don't mandate which one you use, which is very different from film and TV where everybody has to use Pro Tools. But having one picked out that you do use and being very, very fast with it is important. So, I'd say those are the things we're looking for entry-level people. Beyond that, positive attitude, punctuality. I always like to bring this one up because it sounds kind of silly, but like I watch like crazy for typos on resumes.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, who cares if there's a typo on my resume? And my answer to that is I care, because if there's a typo in some script you check in, or there's some typo somewhere in Blueprint and you check it in and you take the build down,
yeah,
it hurts a lot of people. So that's like one, attention to detail is what I would generally say, but that's like one warning sign. If there's typos everywhere, that's usually like, okay, don't call this person back. Somebody asked in the chat preference on Wwise versus FMOD. They both kind of do the same thing with a very different interface. I would say Wise is more broadly used. I don't want to express this as a preference because I've worked with both and I can use both, but and I don't feel super strongly about either. But Wise is certainly in use a lot more in the industry than FMOD is.
Mm.
So if you're gonna only learn one, I would learn Wise. Sorry, do you mind if I just answer
Absolutely.
chat questions as they come up?
Just
Cool.
if you don't mind just giving like a little, a little blurb about what you're answering.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So J. Palmer, I guess, asked preference on Wise versus FMOD. These are audio middleware options that you can connect to a game engine and use as your audio tool. So yeah, I would recommend Wise only because it's more broadly used. Yeah. So you're more likely to run into it. Executives asked how important is previously knowing musics and tones or being musically inclined. I don't know. It's it's not critically important, but there is certainly a trend I've noticed where most sound designers have played in bands or noodle with instruments or play around. Like it's important to be aware of it, and it's important to be able to understand the basics because you might find yourself editing music at some point, or you might find yourself working on a scene or a feature that's very musically heavy and you want to build your sound effects and tune them to the key of the music so that they fit better, or make them dissonant from the music for a particular reason. So having the awareness is good. However, don't feel like you have to be like a piano whiz or formally trained in music to do this stuff, because we don't. And honestly, I would also say, like, I would even be cautious about overselling musical skills, because another thing we often see applying for sound designer jobs is what some of us call the backdoor composer. And that's the person who is a composer, really wants to be a composer, but they'll do a sound design job until they can get that composer gig. And then once they get in the door, A, they're always looking out for a composer job to run off to.
Yeah.
And B, they want to write the music for the game. And they're suddenly in-house saying, hey, I want to write your music. And, well, we need you to do other stuff, not write our music. And so a lot of us get very wary of hiring people that look like they might be like that, because they tend to create problems.
Yeah. Well, that's also similar to one of the reasons that people hesitate to hire someone that's overqualified for a position in general, right? Because you're concerned as a hiring place that, they're not going to want to actually do that job for very long, potentially.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a possibility. And that's something you've got to, well, as the candidate, if you are overqualified, that's something you have to communicate really well. Like, for example, I'm a senior lead audio designer at Certain Affinity. I was previously an audio director for 10 years. When I was talking to Certain Affinity, I was very clear about, like, look, I don't want to be an audio director. I don't want to deal with that crap. I'm done with it. Like, just give me a project and let me run off and do my thing with my little crew of people, and I'll be much happier. So I made a point of communicating that to them explicitly. And I don't know if they were worried about it or not, but if you find yourself in a situation where you're applying for a job that you're overqualified for, you should probably communicate to them that, hey, I want this step down for reasons X, Y, and Z. And mine was just, like I said, I was sick of the politics and crap, and sick of not having as much time with my family. So
yeah, man, we had very similar conversations at our recent positions. So I did the same thing. I was like, I do not want to be a director anytime soon, maybe ever again. Like, I want to just make cool shit, Yeah,
and I'm open to it, but not until my kids are older. Like, when the youngest two are in high school, then I'm willing to talk about it. And certainly if they're off to college. But right now they're 6, man. We've got 26-year-olds around here. I can't do it.
That's totally understandable.
Yeah, I'm very content just owning a project and being done with that. So executives asked, is there any overlap between software engineer and audio engineer? So I'm gonna explain this. There's this terminology thing around audio engineer that I feel like needs to be clarified. In the game development world, I am not an audio engineer. I am an audio designer, an audio director, an audio implementer. I am not an audio engineer. In the games world, when somebody says audio engineer, they are referring to a programmer, usually like a tech programmer who specializes in audio functionality. This is a person who can write your reverb algorithm, who can build audio features in your audio tools,
Yeah.
in your audio layer. There's a spectrum of audio engineers. So at the really advanced end, you've got the people that can do that. At the really light end, you've got people who are basically maintaining like a middleware integration with Unreal or doing some light tools work for audio. And then, you know, somewhere in the middle, you've got people who start to blend into like gameplay level, scripting level features that are beneficial to audio. And then at the far end of the spectrum, like I said, you've got people who can write new components for your audio tools. They can write new, you know, effects processors and other stuff. Those programmers are freaking unicorns. But in the games industry, that is generally what audio engineer means.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're a sound designer, music editor, whatever. Like there's a bunch of different roles. In the film, television, music world, when people say audio engineer, they're talking about the person who sits down at a mixing console or at a computer and makes sounds or mixes sounds or does whatever. So it's weird because over there, audio engineer is kind of just a universal term for people that are audio artists, whereas in the games industry, because we have programmers who specialize in audio, we create a clear division there. So I'm not an audio engineer. As far as, is there an overlap between a software engineer and an audio engineer? Yeah, absolutely. An audio engineer at a game company is basically a software engineer that is focused on audio and tech and tools and stuff. I guess the big thing that makes them so valuable is, for some reason, I'd say it seems to me that most engineers hate audio and want nothing to do with it. So when you find one that actually wants to do something with it, they usually want to focus exclusively on it. And they're really hard to find. So if you find an audio engineer, they're like, keep them very happy and don't let them run off. They're hard to find. Let's see. I am so not the guru.
Oh, you're good.
I want to be a unicorn. My daughter wants to be a unicorn as well.
I don't think that's the same kind of unicorn.
No, oh yeah, I get what you're saying. EP Tool shows experimented a bit last year with spatial audio targeting Dolby Atmos and realized it was fairly complicated. It is and it isn't. Dolby Atmos is fun. Dolby Atmos is kind of weird. Like Dolby Atmos has become this big thing in the music and film world, and us in the game audio world are kind of like, oh, we've seen this before. Like it's not a big deal to us because we've been, for a couple of console generations now, flying audio objects around the world, and then it gets just folded down into stereo or 5.1. Like that's how we've always worked. The big difference for film and TV and music people is they've never had the power to just grab a sound and fly it over your head and do all these other things, which we have. But yeah, Atmos is complicated. It's really cool. I'm working with it a bit on a current project, which is not really an NDA thing because just about everybody at every studio is working with Atmos these days.
Yeah.
But it's fun. What tools, see, Japa King 23 or Japa 23 King asks, what tools do you frequently use as an audio designer? So there's the boring stuff like, you know, Google Sheets, Google Docs, like all the crap that you use this as a general office job. But audio specific tools. So I'm going to give you a list, but I want to preface with saying don't go buy these things because most audio designers I know in the game industry have their own unique little set of tools. So these are the things that work well for me, but they may not work well for you. I use Reaper as my primary DAW. I use that because I'm really fast with it and I can customize it like crazy, and I just really fall in love with that. I use a bunch of plugins for it. Geez, God, there's so many of them. I have like 400 or 500 plugins now. It's crazy, and I don't use that many of them. I'm sad to say. I bought way more than I actually use, but FabFilter Pro Q is the EQ I use all the time. SPL Transient Designer is a transient designer plugin I use all the time. I really like the FabFilter tools. Let me get it down to groups. I really like the FabFilter tools. I really like the Sound Toys plugins. There's a plugin called Triad from Unfiltered Audio that I use quite a bit. I've been very down the rabbit hole with the plugin Enrage by Boom lately.
Hmm.
which is like a modular plugin that you can use to design your own effects processes. Um, and the reason I like it is a couple of other people at work have it, and I can now recreate effects processes that I would use 4 or 5 plugins for in a single plugin, and then send them that preset, and they can use it, and they can send them to me. So it's pretty awesome. I use Valhalla Vintage Verb a lot. I use oh crap, who makes it? They've changed ownership like 3 times now. Isotope has a plugin called has a pair of reverb plugins, Stratus and Symphony, that I use quite a bit for doing reverb stuff, Altiverb. But again, these are all plugins that I've found work well for me. Like, part of being a sound designer is about having taste and having things you like,
Yeah.
and experimenting and filtering what you do through the lens of your taste, and turning it into something that can go in the game. So I find those tools work for me because my ear likes them. That doesn't mean they're the right things for everybody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think that's really important. Like, I think in every discipline, at least in games for sure, using the medium that you can be most effective in, that makes the most sense to you, and also puts the creative output in the way that you're most interested in, right? Like, I think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Is this just Andrew J. Ryan asks, you didn't say would you kindly, but he asks, is this just open Q&A? How do you approach gunshot tales? Gunshot tales, I do a few things for those. It kind of depends on the gun, and it depends on what's working when I'm sitting there designing it. Like on a different day, on a different gun, my answer might be different. But some of the things that I regularly try are taking real gunshot tales from the recordings and compressing the hell out of them to make them super loud. Sometimes I print just the burst of a gunshot, like just the initial transient of the explosion, through convolution reverbs, through algorithmic reverbs. Like I've done both and printed the results to use as things. Sometimes I take things like recordings of thunder, recordings of gun ricochets, distant explosions, other things, and I'll blend them into the tale and fade them in and out to add more character to them. I guess the answer is kind of all of the above. Regarding baked in with switches, that really depends on the game in question, but yeah, I definitely like to do stuff for exterior versus interior differently. If I had my way, every space in a game would get a unique tale for every explosive weapon in the game, but you start to do the math on how many guns does the game have times how many interior spaces does the game have, and it just gets way out of control. So you have to find some place to compromise. When you are printing the results, I mean recording the output. So what I'll do is let's say I'm creating a gun tail for a sound. I will play the explosion, like just a little slice off the top of the explosion of the gunshot, through a reverb, and then I will record the output of that reverb, and then I'll use that as a layer within my gun tail design, if that makes sense. Yeah, whenever I say I'm printing something in an audio context, that just means I'm recording it or turning it into a new audio file. Re-recording, resampling, or printing is a big part of my workflow, at least. And a lot of people I know do the same thing.
I'm curious, and this might be a dumb question, but what is the ratio for you or for most audio designers of taking sounds that are from a library or going out and recording your own? Like, is there a general method is it like, hey, we've got a sound from this library, we don't need to record it, or how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to answer because there's a lot of variables to that. And I don't know how to give you the ratio because I guess I've never really tried to identify like what the ratio was on a project that I finished. Right now I'm on a small team, so we don't record nearly as much as we would like because we're busy, right? We got to get stuff into the game. We almost never just pull a sound out of the library, though. We're almost always processing it, tweaking, doing something to it, whether it's pitching it up or down, speeding it up or down. applying effects, processing to it, queuing it, compressing it, and doing whatever. So it's a pretty rare day that a sound just comes out of the library and goes straight into the game. I'm not going to say never, because I'm sure it's happened at some point, but usually you've got to do a little bit of tweaking to get it to sit right. The goal ultimately is to find the right sound for whatever it is you're working on, whether it's a door close or a monster screaming in your face, right? So what sometimes drives these decisions, aside from just like how much free time do we have, if I sit down to make a sound for something, I'll start looking through my library for stuff. And the library is a collection of sounds I've recorded plus libraries that have been purchased for us to use. And I'll start looking for components that I think will fit. And again, also in addition to sounds usually get processed, sounds often usually get layered too. It's not normally one sound lifted out of a library and put on something. Often the sound you hear in a video game is a composite of like 3 or 4 pieces, or sometimes even more, that make up that sound. So use a doorknob as an example. We'll say, let's use The Last of Us as an example, even though I didn't work on it. But if you open a door in The Last of Us, it's a post-apocalyptic world. It's dirty, it's grimy, everything's broken and worn down. So you may have, just in opening the door, you're going to have the hand touching the knob, turning the knob. How squeaky do you want that to be? You probably want it to be at least somewhat squeaky to sell, squeaky rattly to sell the fact that everything's old and worn down, right?
Right.
The pull of the door, the squeak of the door hinge, how quickly does the person release the thing? Do they turn it back to center? Do they let it go and it quickly snaps back to center? If they let it go and it snaps back to center, how quickly does it do that? How rattly is it? Like, there's all these little things, right? And so, in building that, you'd be like, okay, I need a doorknob turn. I need a rattle. I need the sound of the door hinge. I might need the sound of the bottom of it scraping the, carpet underneath it, if there's carpet underneath it. Like, there's so many layers that can go into just a single moment of sound. It's hard to pinpoint exactly, but maybe that gives you a slightly better idea of how these things are assembled. So if we can't find things, that'll usually force us to go record them. If we can't find things that'll work for it. But yeah, our ratio of recording to just using stuff out of libraries and then processing them and layering them is not great. But again, it depends on the studio. Like, some studios, they have lots of staff and lots of time, and they go out and record tons of stuff.
So it sounds like, I guess what I'm kind of wondering is, it sounds like you kind of look to see if you have something that works first, and then if you don't, you try to go get it. I
do. Although if it's something that I can tell from the beginning is going to be a key sound that's really important, then I might just say, hey, I'll put some intent in, but we're going to go record this if it's something that I know is pretty unique that needs to be special.
Gotcha.
So, like, I can't think of a good example of this without spoiling. Well, I'm trying to think of an example from another game so that I'm not using something that I don't know if you're working on it, but let's talk about Wolverine for a minute. If you were making a Wolverine game and you were like, hey, I need to make the sound of the snicked when the things come out of his hands, that's probably something where you're going to make a note of, I need to go find something unique for that. I either need to get that from Marvel or I need to go record something. I'm probably not just going to pull whatever works out of the library. That's something where you want to make sure you absolutely get just the right thing.
Right.
So when you identify sounds that are really, really important like that, we tend to make a note that we want to go record them, and then we will go out at some point and do that.
All right. So I've got a quick story and then a question for you.
Sure.
Whenever I think of sound design, sound creation, I think of when I was working on Red Faction Armageddon, and Frank Patricus was one of our sound designers, and we had a plasma beam weapon. And as he was showing off in one of our team meetings, he told us at the end that one of the elements he put in there was a lion's roar to like give like this big rumble thing. And before that point, I'd been making games for over a decade already, and it never like that really clicked for me because I'd never really thought about kind of how that stuff is pieced together, and that was fascinating to me. So I'm curious, what's the most interesting sound you've put in something that somebody wouldn't expect to be in there? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I can think of one, although it hasn't shipped yet, unfortunately. But I can tell you what it is without giving away what the game is or telling too much. I did a little bit of sound design on a project a couple of years ago whenever it comes out, assuming this scene in the game survives, the base of a building blows up and the building tips over, right? And it's in a major city, so it's a skyscraper kind of leaning and falling over. I blended a reversed pitch down bird cry on the building tipping over, because it added a cool tonal element to the fall of this thing, and it made it feel even more threatening and interesting. But we do that kind of stuff all the time, like lion sounds and explosions, or even little stuff too. Like there's this weird thing where I'm trying to think of the right way to describe this. There's a book that I love about sound design, by an author named Michel Chion. I think he's French. The book is called, Audio Vision Sound on Screen. And he spends a good period of time talking about the juxtaposition of sound to picture, right? And sometimes sound you hear, the sound that sounds right for something you see on screen, whether in a film, a TV show, or a game, isn't always a one-to-one thing. Like sometimes it can't be, right? Like how do you make a laser gun? We don't have laser guns to record. So sometimes you have to come up with ridiculous things. And that's what led Ben Burtt, who is the original sound designer on Star Wars, who's one of the elder gods of our craft. That's what led him to go out and record tension wires and like hit them with hammers to get that thing that turned into the blasters in Star Wars, right? But even outside of that, sometimes like even with standard stuff that's not super far-fetched in sci-fi, sometimes the sound you need isn't necessarily what a thing really sounds like. Sometimes what things really sound like isn't what people expect in a film or a game. Like I hate to break it to people who haven't fired real guns, but they don't sound like video games. They really don't. They feel extremely powerful, but they don't actually sound like that. They tend to sound a lot more boring. So I'm trying to think where I was going with that point. The point is that we very often use things that don't fit because they make things feel more exciting or more interesting or more like what we need them to be. Using the lion thing as an example. Another great example, I didn't work on it, but I saw this in a YouTube video, and it was one of those things where when they told me how they made the sound, now it's ruined for me. And every time I see the scene, I can't unhear it.
You see how the sausage was made, yeah.
Right. So in Tron Legacy, there's that scene where he jumps up in the air and he catches the little piece for the light cycle, and the light cycle forms around him, and then he lands on the ground and speeds off, right? And there's this little thing as the thing comes together around him. It's this little ticking kind of sound. The way they made that, I shit you not, they took a deck of playing cards, held it in front of a microphone, and flicked the cards one by one into their hand. And once you know that and you go watch that scene again, you're like, that sounds like a deck of playing cards. Like, it's clear as day. But in the context of the scene, without knowing that, it works perfectly. Like, it feels totally right. So we do stuff like that all the time. We have to find the right thing. And honestly, something I do sometimes, especially when I'm really stuck trying to find the right sound, is I have a randomize button in my sound library. Sometimes I'll just either leave the whole library open, or I might limit the scope a little bit, but I hit random and I go through and start listening to stuff without even reading what it is. Just listening for something that sounds right for what I'm working on. And that was actually how I landed on the bird sound for that building falling over. Was, I don't remember what search term I had, but there were some birds in the search results, and I randomized it, and I have this little slider on my sound library so I can turn the pitch down, turn it up, and I turned it down and just sat there and didn't look at the list, but listened to each sound one by one. And then I was like, that, and I heard something. I was just like, oh, that sounds cool. I'll put that in. What is that? Oh, wow, it's a bird. Okay, whatever. I just throw it in because it works.
No, that fascinates me, because like we do that kind of stuff all the time, right? It's about the end result, right? And it sounds like sometimes you don't even, when going into it, you don't even know exactly what you want until you hear it, right? Like, and it's true with design as well.
Some sound designers swear up and down that they hear the thing in their head and they try to recreate it, and I believe them. I sometimes hear it in my head, and when I do, I go digging for the things to recreate it. But I'd say at least half the time, when I sit down to make a sound, my thought process is I have no idea what this is going to sound like. I just know I'm going to find something because it's my job and I'll find it.
Right. Yeah. Problem solving, right?
Until something works. Yeah.
I think it's actually important to say that, because I think that's where at least a good chunk of people are, right? And that we don't always have the solutions, but we know what the problem is and we know we're going to solve it. And that's most of what game development is.
Yeah, I would argue it's more than just game development. It's creativity in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think most creative people can sit down and just generate something fully formed right out of their head at the drop of a hat. And if anybody can, I'm very envious of them. It's what we do is controlled play. Like, we play within context. Like, hey, I need to make a gun sound. Okay, well, I'm going to sit here and play around with my tools with some source material until something starts to click, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like shoving Legos together, man. And it's kind of stressful at times because you have a clock ticking and you have a timer and you have to get it done by a certain deadline. But like, I feel like the way to be creative, at least for me, is to just keep trying stuff and having the taste to know when something is good or worth pursuing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally makes sense.
It's a plastic kind of very faint sound of them clicking together, unless you squeeze it together really fast and then it clicks maybe slightly. Executives said what sound is shoving Legos together make. Well, at least that's when you're putting them together when they're fitting. Otherwise, It's just smacking the plastic together.
Yeah, that is the sound effect in all the Lego games. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you, are there times, and if there are, how do you handle this when you're severely limited in what you can do to create a sound? Like, are you limited by the size of a library, or are you, or is it that, are there times where, you just don't have at your disposal what you need to do something or whatever? Like, but when you get a challenge, you're like, I don't have the things in front of me that I need to do this. How do you approach that?
Well, it depends. If I have access to money, I will sometimes go buy the thing I need.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a thing. We've had this interesting thing happen in the last 5 to 10 years where we have a couple of major sound effects library companies that put out these massive libraries full of sound effects, and it's everything you need, except not really, because there's lots of little gaps in them.
Right.
But we also have a lot of these little boutique sound effects providers that are often one or two people that sell really like hyper specific libraries of sounds. So you can go to one website and buy for like $20 a handful of recordings of Tasmanian devils, for example. Or you can go find a library of, I just saw one today where somebody took an electromagnetic interference microphone and recorded a plasma ball like you would buy at Spencer's, the little things. Yeah, he basically screwed around with one of those and a little plasma ball for a day and got a bunch of interesting sounds out of it. And he's selling that for $15. Like, there's tons of these little hyper specific sound effects libraries that you can go get and supplement your library. So my library is a couple of really big ones with a lot of little ones that I purchased over the years trying to find things that I needed for a specific job. It also depends on like what kind of sound it is. If I'm working on something that's set in the real world or more fantasy, I have to keep it really, and I want to keep it really organic and realistic sounding. That limits my options more and makes me lean more heavily towards finding real recordings that I can manipulate a little bit. If I'm doing something where it's like robots and laser beams and sci-fi stuff, then I can start throwing 10 plugins on something and just screwing with the settings and trying to come up with something cool. How natural sound has to be dictates like some of the solution to that, right?
Sure.
They can give you more options, I guess is what I'm saying. Another thing that we sometimes fall back on, and I kid you not, this stuff ships in games and films all the time, is making sounds with our mouths. We do that sometimes. I'm going to tell somebody else's story, but I wish I could remember what scene it was. I'm not big into the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but a guy you and I both know, Dave Farmer, also a Full Sailor.
Oh yeah.
He had a scene in one of the one of the Lord of the Rings films where he had some little mice interacting with something and he needed sounds for that. That sound is his daughter when she was little. He put a little handheld recorder in front of her and had her make mouse sounds, and that's what he put in the
I did not know that.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we do shit like that all the time. So it just depends. There's lots of ways to get around it, but it's either make something with your mouth, grab a microphone and go record something, go buy a little library, or if it's sci-fi, just start, banging things together, so to speak, with your plugins and see what you can flop us.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking
there's
earlier.
Usually never one answer to it either, so it's about finding one of the right answers, I guess.
That is the same across most of development as well, I think. There's always multiple ways to do something. Something you said earlier got me thinking a little bit. You're talking about with the Last of Us with the door example, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that got me thinking is audio is notoriously toward the end of a project, right? Like yes. for worse, right? Like it should not be that way. We're trying to make it better, but the example you gave was really interesting to me, because when you're talking about things like, the half click of the door, or like, these very specific things that through iteration and design and, in gameplay, we might find that, we need to make those changes. Right. And so if, you've put in a sound and then we change kind of like the speed at which the door moves or those things, now you've got to go rework that sound. Right. So is that like, talk to me a little bit about where you guys tend to fit in and what kind of brings that stuff about?
Where we get in, where we fit in.
Yeah.
Just now I've got too short in the brain. Thanks. No, we try to get involved as early as possible. Obviously, things change. This is the life of sound effects and VFX, especially. Like us, those two departments are at the end of everything.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, and I don't have a good answer for it. Like, there are things you can do to try to mitigate the damage of that somewhat. A lot of things you can do. You can communicate well with the teams upstream of you and help them to understand the kind of headaches they create. You can prioritize what you're working on based on how done things are and how your creative director is responding to things in the build. There's a lot of stuff you can do. It's a really nebulous, challenging problem. I will say, though, that it's good to get audio involved as early as possible. It frustrates me when you got another shot. It frustrates me when companies don't involve audio early on, because it sets us up for failure by keeping us at the end of stuff. And it's not just about having time to do stuff too. Like, as an example, if you have a design team or an engineering team, let's just go with design team. If you have systems designers and designers in general who are not used to working with audio, they'll build systems that work from a gameplay perspective and maybe even a visual perspective, but can completely screw over the audio team in terms of getting sounds out.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick an example from the COD days. There was a handful of the COD games had double jumping in, right? And on one of them, the way double jumping was initially implemented, there was really no differentiation between a jump from the ground versus a double jump once you were in the air already. The game had no awareness of that, and it's been so long I can't remember why. But how the hell do you hook up a double jump sound to that?
Right, yeah.
Like,
you got to have a hook for that.
If your character's got like a little rocket booster that doesn't visually do anything, but you want to hear a little when they do the second jump, if there's no way to differentiate between whether it's a first or second or third jump, how the fuck do I put a sound on that?
Yeah.
And it happened because they built this system and said, oh, we'll tell audio when we're done, and then they can make us a sound. And they just didn't think of it. And if they involved us in the discussion early on, we would have said, okay, well, cool. We're going to have normal jump off the ground, sound like a normal jump. But then once you're in the air, if you jump again, we want to do something different. And that would have inspired them to say, oh, yeah, I guess we should track that as a state or something.
Right.
So that we know what the hell's going on. And we got it fixed, but like, just multiply that across every feature in the game, and you can have issues like that all the time.
Well, you're coming in defensive too, right? Like you're coming in trying to you're coming to watch your own back at that stage, right? Instead of a collaborative thing, we're like, here's what we would like. How does this affect everyone? What's a solution we can come to, together that's best for all of us?
Right. Whereas when we're able to get in the room earlier, we can, take the collaborative approach, which is what we like. And sometimes we can positively influence things too. There are all sorts of things we can do to help. I mean, first of all, most audio people play games, so we have ideas too.
Right.
Secondly, there are things we can do to impact gameplay that people don't necessarily think about until they actually have us in a room discussing things. Like, as an example, this wasn't me that did this. This was an audio designer who worked for me on COD. And by the way, I'm talking about a lot of COD examples because they're the most recent things in memory that are not locked under NDA, so I can actually talk about them. But we had a COD designer, a COD audio designer, who was in a meeting once. As an example, he did this a lot, but I'm just thinking of one particular case where some designers were talking about how playtests were going in a multiplayer map. And they were pointing out, like, hey, there's this one place where a person can snipe from, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's a little imbalanced. We want to find some way to temper the ability to snipe from there. And they couldn't find a good way to put something in to obstruct a sight line. And he was the genius who said, well, hey, why don't you put something in there that I can put sound on and mask the noise? So that way they can sit there and snipe all they want, but they won't be able to hear the footsteps of people sneaking up on them and react to it. So there are things we can do that can influence design in a positive way and help out too. But we can't do that unless you include us in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's beneficial. And you talk about how to telegraph boss enemies doing stuff. Like, we can be a big part of that. There's all sorts of things we can contribute to from a design perspective if you include us. So I'm a big habit. I have a very big habit of trying to muscle my way into these conversations as early as possible because I want us to be there for all of the reasons I just mentioned. Let's say hypothetically you were working on a project where you had an audio middleware integrated, and without the involvement of audio, maybe before audio had even been brought onto the project, somebody in the engineering team looked at the whole middleware solution, like the tools, the pipeline, everything, and said, you know what, I'm going to optimize this because I think I can do this better. I think I can make this more efficient. I think I can make it work better. I think I can do all these things. But that person doesn't know anything about audio, and that, importantly, that person doesn't discuss it with anybody from audio and doesn't have anybody test it to make sure that it works from the perspective of an audio
the people that would
designer.
Use it.
Yeah. So you might end up in a situation where your profiler tool, instead of showing you the name of game objects and their locations in the space where they're playing sounds, no longer tells you the locations where they're playing them, and no longer tells you what the names of the sounds are, or even what the name of the object is. It just spits out a bunch of text, just random numbers and letters as part of his optimization, because these objects don't need to keep track of names for themselves. And then you're looking at your profiler and you're like, how the hell do I even parse this anymore? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? You might run into a situation where he decides to optimize the reverb system and doesn't test to verify that it even works after he's done.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can tell this. My eyes twitching. This came from a real life example that was unpleasant. It's like we love collaborating with engineering when they actually have time for us, and the experience has been mixed. I mean, I'm not a fool. I don't think audio features are the make or break thing for the sales of a game, obviously. So I understand why engineering doesn't give us all the time in the world, but you've got to work with us some, because if you don't, you might break our stuff without helping us at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only had that happen once, but he knows about it. Thanks, he knows about it. It was not fun.
It's funny.
The guy meant well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Best intentions and
best intentions, worst results. It was bad.
Well, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of why collaboration is so important across the board in this industry, right? Like, everything you do is affecting someone else at all times.
Yeah, nobody should. I would say this is a blanket statement. Like, no engineer should ever be screwing with another discipline's pipeline or tools without at least discussing it with them.
Yeah.
And telling them what's going on and getting their input. and having them test it. Like, I mean, imagine if they said, hey, we're going to completely rewrite the animation pipeline and we're not going to include any animators. Like, holy crap, that would be insane.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
would that do? Yeah, it's not good. Collaboration is important. And that's again, to go back to the thing about having a positive attitude and things we look for when we're hiring people. Like, game development's a team sport. If you want to make games by yourself and not have to listen to anybody, go make an indie game with luck. Well, that does not work at the AAA level. It just doesn't. And at least in my experience, people like that get weeded out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the same, but that's what I've seen.
Oh, absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. It's collaboration and, positive attitude and, those kind of things go such a long way. Like, the thing that I can't stand at all is two things: arrogance and what's the right way to say that? Someone that doesn't share, someone that's a reclusive,
Yeah.
right? Like, I can't stand it's not ready for consumption yet, right? Like, this is game development. It's not ready for consumption until it's shipped, right? Like, we need to be iterating and looking at it the whole time, whatever it is.
So I agree with you. However, I will say I have seen some studios where the culture is not receptive to that, and I think it's a really bad problem.
Yeah.
But there's a certain studio out there that I do not work for currently, that I've actually never worked for, but I collaborated with them as a co-developer long ago. That at the time, basically, if anything went into the build that was anything less than shippable quality, you'd have a creative director saying, "What the hell is this? Why does that look broken? Don't put that in there."
That is,
and I thought it was terrible.
that is
absolutely
wild.
Horrible. That place was very broken. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I try to encourage people, put stuff in, even if it's work in progress. I mean, don't put something in that's going to break the build. But that aside, put things in and iterate in place. And then yeah, the arrogance thing is, who the hell likes working with people with big egos? And I mean, I don't. And well, I'm not going to say the person's name, but one of the best sound designers in this industry, I would argue, has got a horrible attitude. And I'd never work with him willingly. I don't care how good he is. Most people, I don't want to deal with that. So you've really got to keep your ego in check. Try to be a kind person. Like, it will serve you well. If you're getting into our industry, be kind, be collaborative, be helpful. Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard, and being a jerk will. I mean, I can't say if that'll get you executive roles and the people that move around at the very tops of these game companies. Maybe you have to be different there. But when you're at the developer level, like, none of us want to work with assholes. We all want to get along.
Yeah.
We're just trying to make a game, man.
I think kindness is a good word, right? Because just think about the fact that everyone else around you has the same kind of responsibilities you do, the same kind of workload, the same kind of deadlines. Like, you're all doing the same thing. So there's definitely some rapport there. There's the ability. You need to just think about things from other people's perspective.
Yeah, and focus on what's best for the project. Like, don't go in saying, I'm going to work on this game and it's going to win a ton of sound awards. Like, that's my whole goal here. No, like, I want to work on this game and I want to make it the best game it can be.
Yeah.
Focus on making the project better, not on serving yourself.
I mean, do your best work, right? You should be doing your best work.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But, like, don't prioritize the project. Don't prioritize your own discipline.
Yeah.
Everything should be in service of what's best for the game. Executives ask, do you find that people hold on to knowledge because they do that as job security? I think some do. I've noticed in the world of sound design, and this is across games, film, TV, because a lot of us mingle in our communications because we're different mediums, we're doing similar stuff. There are some people that are very open about how they do what they do, and there are some people that are extremely secretive about it. And I suspect it's a job security thing. I don't subscribe to that because I feel like most of the sound design tricks I know are things I've learned from other people anyway and just turned into my own thing, or just blatantly used because it worked for them. Like, some things I haven't turned into my own thing. I just use them because somebody else showed it to me and I'm like, oh, that's brilliant, I'm going to use that. And I suspect most sound designers are the same way. I don't think anybody has got a bag of tricks full of nothing but tricks they created themselves. Um, and also, I mean, there's an argument to be made for if you're paranoid about giving away your secrets,
Yeah.
A, you're never going to come up with any more. And B, you're probably not that good to begin with. What we do is we look at the project and we look at our recordings, whether we're recording them ourselves or pulling them from the library or whatever, and we figure out how to move the pieces around and process them to fit whatever the context is we're trying to put them into in a game. No two people are going to do it the identical way, even if they have the same exact tools, even if they have the same exact bag of tricks. Their brains are different, their ears are different. You're going to have some variance, right? So I personally don't see it as threatening to share how I do what I do.
Yeah.
And I think the more confident people out there feel the same way. I'm totally not one of the confident people out there. I'm my own worst critic. But I think the people that do keep their stuff secret generally have confidence problems. I think it's an insecurity thing, which is exactly what Andrew Ryan said in the chat. Totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I are both guys who we do a lot of that kind of talk when we go back to visit Full Sail, right? Like we're always talking to people about how we do things, why we do things. And I have found that I continue to get better because I have those conversations, right? Because even at a basic level, the way I do something might not be the best way. And having a conversation about it, I might learn something new. The thing that I'm doing that I think is great could be better. But even on top of that, the things I'm doing that I think are mundane, normal, day-to-day things, there's a lot of people out there that don't even know, right? And that's honestly a big reason why I like doing this show, because people get to learn the in and outs of what we do that doesn't get talked about that often.
Yeah. There's also, what was I gonna say? Oh shit. All right, that train left the station.
You'll think of it in a minute.
Response to that and it just vanished. No, I was going to say something like, there's also things that, so yes, sometimes I get ideas from people from talking to them. Sometimes people who are way less experienced than me give me good ideas. Either they give me ideas or they ask a question that makes me think of something. That happens all the time.
Yep.
But the other thing is, like, I do think there are some people who don't share things. I think most people who don't share things are doing it because of insecurity, but I think there are some people who don't think to share things. Like there are certain things I do that I'm not sure I would think to tell anybody else if I were telling them how to be a sound designer, because they're just so second nature to me. I don't even think about it anymore. Like I'm sure there's a little bit of that going on too.
But, there's also, like, I had an example today at work where somebody asked me how to do something. And my response was, I don't remember, right? Like I need to go back to my notes. I need to go back and look at an example. Like let me recreate it and then I'll tell you how I did it. So you'll have that information going forward. Right. Yeah. But that happens to me all the time because I'm definitely an out of sight, out of mind person when it comes to this stuff. It's one of the things I love about game development is we eventually get to finish something and not think about that piece anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's do you go through that thing where after you ship a game, if you play it like within a year after ship, it's just nothing but problems that you notice things you didn't get done. And then if you go back like 6 years later, you can play it and you've actually forgotten enough about it that you can enjoy it.
Oh, that happens way faster for me. Like a year later, I've forgotten everything. So it's like a whole new experience again.
No, it takes a few years for me, but I like being able to go back and play older games. And like, I can't even remember if I worked on something. It's like, did I do that? I don't know. It's nice. I don't know. What else do people want to know about sound design? I've kind of covered the basics of it. I mean, I haven't gone like on a deep dive into how I make specific sounds, but it's mostly just pulling recordings, move them around, tweak them, change them until it sounds right.
Yeah. What does that mean? Sounds right? Like, is that just a personal thing for people? Like,
it's a personal thing. I tend to. So there, like we said earlier, there's no one right answer to any problem in game development.
Yeah.
And this applies to game sound as well as film and TV sound. Um, there's this magical thing that happens when you have the right sound married to the thing in the game where they stop feeling like separate things and they start to feel cohesive. Like you fire that weapon and it feels right when you shoot it, or you open that door and it feels right, or you hit that, you get that objective update and the thing pops onto the screen and it just feels right. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Where it feels satisfying and it actually works. That is what I mean when I say it sounds right, is I'm looking for things that gel correctly, that gel in a good way with what I'm attaching sounds to. And I think I could probably say feels right as well. It's different criteria for different things. If I'm working on like sounds for locomotion of a character, and I'm making their jump sound, like does the jump sound in combination with the animation and how high the character moves, like does it all feel right? Does it all sell the right feeling of weight you want for that character? Because if one of those elements is off, it's not going to feel correct, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I think it's different for different sound people, but for me, I struggle to predict how things are going to feel until they're in the game. So I like to get sounds in the game and play with them,
yeah,
and see how they feel, in context. So yeah, when I say I'm looking for things that sound right, it really feels like half my job is just trying things until something works, and I've been doing this long enough that when I'm trying to build certain types of sounds, I know some of the things to go for, and I know some of the processes to go for. But I'm still kind of experimenting with stuff until it starts to feel right for whatever it is I'm building. So I guess that's what I mean. It's a very feeling driven thing for me. It's not like if somebody were to say, "Hey, write down the criteria of a good sound effect," I couldn't do it. Like there's no way to do that. It's so subjective, and it's so much about how it feels in relation to the picture, to the controller in your hand. Does it, when you're playing a game, we want people to get into that. I mean, in the film world, they call it suspension of disbelief. I'm actually not sure if there's a term, maybe you know of one, but that feeling where the rest of the world goes away and you forget that you have a controller in your hand and you feel like you are one with the game and you're playing it and what you're thinking is happening on the screen. You know that feeling I'm describing? Flow, yeah. It's like a flow state with the game. We want people to get to that. And so you want sounds that reinforce that, not distract from it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best way to explain it. Immersion, yeah, immersion's a piece of it, though. I don't use immersion for that because I feel like sounds fall into three buckets. There's information, immersion. Oh God, the whole core of how I am a sound designer would just vanish from my head. What was the third one? Oh yeah, emotion. So immersion, emotion, information. Like those are really what I feel like the three main functions of a sound in a game are. So immersion's only part of it, but yeah, it's all about trying to find the thing that feels right. I'm kind of talking in circles on this.
Oh no, you're good. There's a good question.
Ryan.
Yeah. I was going to bring up that question for him. He's asking, what are the elements sound designers early in their career? What elements that people don't often do that well?
Yeah, there's a lot. I can't cover them all because they're all different, but some of the big ones that stick out to me are lack of attention to detail, lack of ambient detail. You're one of the things you learn early on, especially if you're able to look over the shoulders of other sound designers, is people put a lot more detail and movement into sounds than you probably think they do. Even things like moving so on a gun tail, since somebody asked me about gun tails earlier, I'll often have the volume fader on that gun tail not just fading out over time, but also wobbling up and down and kind of moving in a regular pattern, because that feeling, that movement of it makes it feel a bit more realistic. It makes it feel like it's more an environment,
more natural.
Yeah. So doing little things like that. EQing sounds layer together well. There's all these little details that people don't think about when they're younger, they're more just kind of slapping sounds in and trying to put sounds to each thing they see on the screen.
Right. Yeah.
So that's something that's missing, is like lack of ambient detail and lack of attention to detail in the authoring of sounds. I see a lot of demo reels from young sound designers that are emotionally flat, I guess is what I would say. And what I mean by that is they're looking at what they're seeing on screen, and in a very literal way, they're putting a sound on everything, but they're not thinking about, well, hey, that sound is really important. And while that's happening, maybe that other thing in the background doesn't even need a sound. Like maybe it can just be silent because it's not important. Or it can have a sound, but it can be so quiet it doesn't matter. Lots of stuff like that. And those are the things that really catch our attention about young sound designers. We sometimes see people where the sound's maybe not that well executed, but you can tell they're trying to push and pull things based on the emotional or informational content of them and how relevant they are to whatever the player is experiencing. And that usually catches our attention. It's like, oh, they get it. Like they get the push and pull of this stuff.
Well, now what you're actually talking about, which we haven't discussed, is the mix, right? Like kind of like that's that importance, right? Of what has kind of the dominant, presence.
Yeah. Although design choices matter for that too. I would say you should put more effort and more detail into sounds that are more relevant to the player, and less effort and less detail into sounds that aren't. Doesn't mean you should like do a half-assed job. Just, are you going to spend more effort on a character's magical ability if they're shooting a fireball out of their hand, or on some person moving around in the background of a scene, right? So it happens at the design level, but yes, it also happens at the mix level. Figuring stuff out. Mixing in games is really hard. It's a favorite subject of mine, but non-linear mixing is really complicated.
Man, so much about games is just so much more complicated than people realize, right? Because at a simple level, we never know what the player's going to look at, where they're going to be spatially. Yeah. Like we have to think about all those possible scenarios and making sure that what we have at least works for everything they try to do.
Yeah. This is the one place where I really get envious of people who work in linear media.
Yeah, right.
But I also really enjoy getting it right. So it's fun when we get it right. The mix is difficult. I usually tell people we don't mix the game, we teach the game how to mix itself. And what we do is we have to build systems, priority systems for sounds based on distance, based on importance to the player as we've assigned it.
Yeah.
Based on the loudness of the sound. We build these systems that kind of mix themselves, and we have to sit there and experiment with it and fine tune it. For every sound you put in a game world, you have the option to have or not have an attenuation, which means, how much quieter does the sound get over distance. And
right.
There's a real world attenuation, and then there's the game world where, hey, maybe you don't want it to be realistic. Maybe you want more threatening sounds to have a longer attenuation curve, or maybe you want that curve to look like this instead of like this.
Some things we need to make sure the player hears it regardless of where they are, right?
Yeah, and some sounds you don't have attenuation on at all. You just pan them to the right location so that they're coming from the right direction, but you don't turn them down at all. There's how do sounds get filtered over time. There's how do they send to the reverb over time. So there's mixing at that level that happens in the design of the sounds and in the initial implementation of the sounds. And then once you have all that, you have all these sounds mixed into what are called buses, which are groups of sounds. So you might have player sound effects, and under player you have categories like, his Foley sounds, his weapons, his abilities, whatever. And then you might have an enemy category, and you might have a world category, you might have a UI category. You then have to go through the game and say, hey, in these circumstances, we want you to push these particular sounds up and down. And some of it may be like hand scripted, like if you get into a case where you're like in an in-game cinematic, I always think of Half-Life 2 where people are talking to you and you're kind of locked in place.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might be able to do it linearly and force the bus volumes to certain settings. But if stuff's happening dynamically in the game, you're doing things like, hey, if a mortar explodes near me, I need that to apply a mix state for a certain period of time based on the distance between that mortar and myself. So there's like all sorts of moving pieces to it, and it's really about building a gigantic Rube Goldberg machine of mix changes and hoping it all works. And you can almost always break these things, but you want to cover the majority of cases as best you can.
That's what we ultimately do in games most of the time, right? And when people are talking about how did this bug get through, it's usually not that we didn't know about it, and it's not that, you know, it's that we try for the bulk of cases, right? What are 90% of people going to see? That's what we start with. And then whenever these edge cases show up, sometimes we're like, you know what? The amount of work it would take to fix that edge case that such a small percent of people are going to see is not worth our time, right? Or not that it's not worth our time, is we don't have enough time in the schedule to do it, right?
Yeah, because we've got 15 other things that people are far more likely to encounter.
Right.
Like we'll never ship a bugless game. It's not going to happen. We don't want to ship a game that's a total disaster. I'm not going to name any games, but some games have shipped as like a total duct tape together mess, and I hate that people ship games like that.
Yeah.
But most of us who ship games, we can't catch everything because we simply can't. There's not enough. Software is so complex. Games are so complex now. It's a miracle they ship at all.
No kidding.
And I get a little mad. Did I rant about lazy devs last time? I get really mad about it. I've met very, very few lazy devs in my life. Most of us are trying to make the best thing possible. And if you found a bug after we shipped, it's often an edge case or something broken. Or like there's also sometimes the ugly case of we wanted to fix it, we wanted to delay the ship of this patch or whatever, and somebody way above us said, nope, ship it anyway.
Yeah,
that happens
absolutely.
a lot too.
And it's just how it has to be sometimes, right? And you know, like you said, games are so big, so many people are involved. There are days in development where suddenly the build is just broken today, right? Like something happened where none of us get to work today, right? Like these kind of things just happen. Or somebody will find a bug in the game that's, you know, a showstopper that has been there for months that no one just happened to hit yet, right? But now it brings production to a halt because you can't progress in the game until it's fixed. Like it's just, it's every day's different. It's wild.
Yep, and there's hardware variability too. That, you know, especially in the PC world, but even in consoles, like there are revisions of hardware that we may not have been able to test on for some reason, and then it gets out there, and you're like, oh, all the Xbox 360s that shipped in the first year after launch have this problem that we never saw because there was a hardware revision after it, and all of our test kits are newer. Like that kind of stuff happens.
Or also people that don't like, there was a time when you could not connect to the internet, right? And not get a console update. It's like, oh, if you have the bare bones version of the console, this problem's going to happen. You know, like there's just so many things.
I hate to say it, but there are still people who can't. Not many, but there are still people out there who can't. And I have unfortunately been on games that have shipped that are unfinishable without a patch.
I believe it.
I can't remember if I mentioned this last time. Advanced Warfare, the ending was changed after it shipped.
Oh, really?
We patched in a different ending. Yeah. So if anybody gets the original pressing disc of that game on a console, I think on PS4 or Xbox One, and that's not connected to the internet, and you play it, assuming some other bug doesn't stop you, if you get to the end, there's a different ending.
Interesting. So it wasn't completable in the off disc. That's what you're saying. Like there was something that was found later.
I think it was completable. I think it was completable off the disc, and I think it was. Somebody's posted it to YouTube. I think it was. I think that game was finishable all the way through, and I think it was Advanced Warfare. I'm not 100% sure. It's been so long, but
I get that.
One game I worked on, and I think it was Advanced Warfare. They actually changed the ending after it shipped. Well, it wasn't after it shipped. It was in that weird spot where we'd already shipped it off to be manufactured.
Right.
But the game hadn't actually made it to players yet.
When we've gone gold, right?
Yeah, it had gone gold, and we shipped a 0-day patch that actually changed the ending. And so some people out there got that unpatched game and played it and got to the end and saw a different ending than the rest of the world. So it's weird that it happens. Game dev is weird, man.
It is definitely weird, and that definitely happens.
Yeah.
That's why I tell you, like, one of the reasons I love this so much is because every project, every team, like even the same studio, same team, different project, it runs completely different. And so it's always exciting. There's new problems to solve. I love it. So I'm curious.
Why I keep doing it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is why we keep doing it, right? You know, I was thinking about this the other day. So our industry is very young, right? And you and I are roughly the same age. The industry was somewhat established when we started, but still very young. I often think, how long are we gonna do this? You know, like, are we really gonna retire at, like at retirement age from making games? Is that what's gonna happen? Like, we be one of the first generations to do that.
We might be. I mean, it's kind of a tricky question, man. Ageism is a thing in our industry at some studios. That freaks me out. Like, am I going to get to an age where game studios are going to say, no, we don't want to hire you? I heard a joke from an HR person once, not where I worked, or not where I work currently. Sorry, a place I used to work. I'm not going to say where, but I once heard an HR person jokingly say in a meeting, we want somebody with 20 years experience, under 30, with no kids. So I was like, yeah, that pretty much nails what you want. So I don't know. I don't want, I mean, I do want to retire, and I don't. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to want to stop doing sound or making games. I enjoy it too much. But I certainly want to get to a point where I am financially independent enough that I don't have to work.
Sure.
Most of my absolute favorite games are weird indie games that probably couldn't afford me as a sound designer. I would love to spend my later years working on games like that.
There you go.
I think it'd be a lot of fun. And I'd be able to say, you know what, pay me whatever the going rate is for an indie game sound designer. I don't care. I want to work on the game because I want to work on the game.
Yeah.
Yes, I know fire is for people who don't have kids. Damn it. Quit reminding me. Thanks, you just said that. I'm not gonna. Mine's gonna be more like firm, financially independent, retire middle age. That's what I'm after. I retire early, but earlier than everybody else. I'm trying. So that to me is like the ideal. Is that? But I mean, I think I would get bored, and I say that because I've had a few gaps where I've had even like a few weeks or a month, like between leaving a job and starting a new one. I lose my mind, man. I can't not have stuff to do. And I mean, I find things to do. I start projects, I work on things, but I don't like not having something to do. And my mom is now retired, and I'm seeing it in her too. She's 72 years old, and she's working on craft projects. She's in a local community, like as a treasurer. She's doing shit because she can't stand sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
And some old people can sit around and watch TV all day. She cannot, and I will not be able to either. It's just not my nature. But will the game industry allow us to get to that age? I don't know. I hope so.
I think it will. I think it will. Well, what I'm starting to see is the value. Is like, people are starting to understand the value of that experience, right? And companies are seeing, at least what I am seeing is that companies are valuing it, right? And so I no longer have a concern that's at least a possibility. Maybe a bunch of us will get together and just do some really cool shit, and that's, we'll just do it on our own time, and it'll be awesome. Like, I could see something like that happening.
Yeah, and to me, that's what it's about. And it's actually, I shouldn't even make it about the game. Like, to me, it's even more about the people.
Yep.
Like, I'm very fortunate right now to be working at a place where I really love the people. And I met these folks because they worked with us when I was at Reagan. They worked with us on Modern Warfare Remastered. That's how I got to know these guys. Like, I would work on a Barbie game with the sound crew, not because I'm into it, but because I like working with them.
Yeah.
Like you'd have to put us on a project that was so horrifically against my values and ethics for me not to work with this group of people. That to me is like the most important thing. And that's why I'm like, I don't know if I'll even retire, because I want to work with cool stuff. I want to work with cool people. And what we do is fun. And I don't know, like now you've got me thinking, like, is there a day someday in 10 or 20 years where a bunch of us Full Sail folks all retire from our respective employers and just start a studio together?
Yes.
That could be really fun too.
It's going to happen. We can be fully remote, right? Like we live in an age now where we can all live wherever we want. We can do.
It might be nice to all be in Orlando too.
Well, I mean, I'm
not a big fan of Orlando necessarily, but just because there's a hub there for all of us to congregate at, that might be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that would be a lot of fun. Kind of embarrassing, Mark. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to retire. I don't know what retirement looks like. I hope you're right, and I hope companies see the value in that. I have certainly, in my experience, seen the value of that. I've worked with engineers and designers who are 10, 20 years my senior, who are just absolute badasses, and they are so worth every penny they're paid, because they get stuff done right. Like maybe not the first time, but the first or second time they get the stuff figured out quickly, because they have failed so many times before, they know how not to fail. And that's super, super valuable.
Is there anything that is on your mind you want to make sure that we cover tonight? Anything that you came in hoping that we would discuss?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about sound design and what the process is like. I wasn't going to get super deep because I don't know if how many people watching are actually sound effects designers. But no, we touched on that. We talked about how it's like taking the ingredients and putting them together and trying them out in different time relationships, layering them, whatever, applying processes, and just trying to find the thing that feels right. That's a big part of what we do. It's a really cool job. It's a lot of fun. It's really challenging at times. It can be really frustrating. Like I sometimes have periods where I go through a day or two and just nothing's working and it sucks. But I guess an important thing to say for any aspiring sound folks that might be watching is that is normal, and knowing that it's not working is important, because that means you have the judgment to know when it's good. And I will not name his name, but a sound designer I shouldn't say way older than I am, because if he hears this, he might be mad at me. A sound designer who's way more experienced than I am, who's a bit older than me, but not that old. I asked him about this once, and he said, "No, I don't get everything right, Mark. Like, you don't see the 180 times I get it wrong before the one time I get it right. I've just learned how to go through all those wrong versions of it really, really fast." That is what our job is. So if you are trying to become a sound designer and you're putting stuff to picture and you're layering and experimenting and things aren't working, you have to keep going and keep trying new things, and eventually things will fit together. And the more you do it, the faster you get, because the more you learn, the more experienced you are with it. But you have to keep doing it, and don't think that all of us who do this and make a living at it can just imagine a sound in our head and instantly pull it out of our butts and put it to picture, because most of us can't do that.
Yeah.
There's a few who can, and they're really lucky, and I hate them. But most people can't just do it instantly. For most people, the creative process is a very challenging process. So if you're struggling, you're doing it right.
Yeah, man, that's
it. Other than that, I'm here to answer questions.
That is, I think that's true across all disciplines in game development, right? And the more that I see, something that you just made me think of is, the more that I see what current people that are just entering the industry that go through, game programs and, have a high level of, knowledge as they enter the industry, that are way ahead of what we had when we got into the industry. Right. I often think of what are they going to look like 10, 20 years from now? What are they going to be capable of? So I've got to continue to keep getting better. Right. So that my value stays at its peak. As you can't ever stop learning in this industry at all.
No, you can't. You have to do it. And it's crazy, but well, it's weird. You've got to keep learning, but I feel like there's definitely a line between the people who force themselves to try to keep up and the people who are just so interested that they can't help but keep up. I think it's a lot easier to be like that, which is what I am. Although I do lose a lot of sleep over it by laying up at night reading books and watching YouTube videos and happy sounds. Like, well, my wife's in the channel. Like, honey, how often do you roll over in the middle of the night and see me watching a YouTube video about sound engineering or sound design or something? Probably happens at least once or twice a week. And she's like, fucking go to sleep. Yeah, it's just, you've got to be passionate about it. You got to want to do it. And I don't mean passion in the, we want to take advantage of you in a crunchy way. Like, you really have to care about this craft to do this and make a career out of it. Because if you don't, there's a lot of other people out there who do care about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I always say we have to keep learning in this industry. And a lot of times because the tools we use and things that are evolving, but you know, your own process, the more that you experience, the more that you know, whenever you're thinking about how to approach a problem, the more experience and you know, and knowledge that you have about that particular subject gives you the right way to approach that problem in an earlier attempt, right?
Well, and the experience from all the times you've had to solve the same exact problem before, because I was just thinking, as you were saying, our tools keep evolving, but sometimes they devolve and we have to resolve the same problems again. That's really frustrating. But it's also cool because then you can look at it and say, well, I've solved this problem 3 times before. Here's what I learned each time. Here's how I'm going to fuck it up less this time.
Right. Yeah.
Because we do that a lot. I'm doing that right now with something at work. So yeah, it's funny how that works.
Oh, I'm at one of those phases right now where all the things I'm working on, I haven't done specifically yet at this company on the project. So I'm learning a lot just in like, how do we do that? Like what, you know, and so there's a whole lot of just like, oh, I've done something similar many times in the past, but how do we do that here? You know, like how was it done on previous game? You know, like that kind of stuff. And that's a hard brain place for me, right? Where I'm like when I'm almost learning from scratch, like I know how to do this in other places, but now I've got to like figure out the right way to do it now. That can be exhausting.
It can be. It's challenging. And it's challenging, especially when, I mean, I'm not trying to sound arrogant by saying this, but sometimes I have worked with other teams and seen like, oh, they have the way they've been doing this for a long time, but I know a way that's much more efficient and better than that. And then you're not just learning their way, but you're also trying to steer them towards a better way. That can be really challenging too. But I've had both. I've also gone into places where I've learned things and I'm like, oh, wow, this is a really brilliant way of doing this. Why did I never think of this before?
Yeah.
I feel dumb. That happens to me all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're on Spider-Man too. Nice.
Yes, I am.
Our youngest son will be thrilled. Spider-Man is the greatest human on earth in his eyes, and he plays Miles Morales and Spider-Man all the time. So he'll be ecstatic when that comes out.
Oh man, I can't wait for people to see it. It's coming along very well, and I'm a lifelong Spider-Man fan too. He's been my favorite superhero since I was little.
Nice.
So it's a dream come true in a lot of ways for me. I'm super excited.
That is cool. I gotta work on a Batman game someday. That's if I want to check out the superhero, that's mine. Preferably one where he kicks Superman's ass, because then I'll be able to show that to Frank Sherry and be like, "Here you go, bud, check it out, play this." Anyway, I don't think Frank's watching. I just had to throw that in there just in case.
Well, we'll make sure he sees a clip. How's that?
Yes.
I didn't realize you were that big of a Batman fan. I'm a Marvel fan, right? So I grew up, that was my thing. My dad is a DC fan. He's a big Batman fan actually as well. But I don't know. It just, I've always gravitated towards Marvel. I don't know. It feels different to me.
I think I liked Batman as a kid because Batman I saw him and I was like, you know what? If I was pissed off enough and I had enough money, I could actually do that.
Yeah, it's true.
Whereas most superheroes, you can't say that about. But I like a lot of stuff. I like a lot of Marvel films and shows. I also like nerdy art house movies that people watch and say, oh, you know, superhero films are garbage. This is all that matters. Like, I watch everything. It's funny, Dana and she's much more a Marvel kid than I am, and I'm much more of a DC kid. Although I will say, and I will admit, you all have the far better movies and shows.
Oh yeah,
DC,
absolutely, no
DC has
question.
not handled the film stuff very well. Although their animated films are actually really good.
Yep, I agree with that too.
But they're God, I wish the DC universe could get its shit together the way the Marvel film world has.
Joker was incredible. I haven't seen the new Batman yet, which I hear is also incredible.
It's surprisingly good, and I agree Joker was good, but Joker doesn't even feel like a DC universe film. I mean, I know it technically is, but
yeah, I'm with you.
It's so different, and I liked it, but it was so different. It's like I don't know that this even counts.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's very real, right? Like it felt like, oh, this literally could happen right now, and that's kind of terrifying. But
yeah, I really liked the new Batman, and I will answer your question in just a second, Banksy, but I really liked the new Batman. It's a little too dark, and I'm a guy who's always liked darker Batman, but it's like it's not far from Seven. Like it's dark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really dark. The villain in it is doing some really dark shit, dude.
Interesting.
So I'm actually, I would say like I don't even mind watching it. Like I'm not like offended by it or anything, but I think it's more that, you know, I'd like a Batman movie I could take my son to, because our oldest son is very into Batman. Like it'd be great if I could have a Batman movie that my son Milo could sit and watch, and he cannot watch the last couple of them.
Okay.
They're too fucking dark. Just
that
too
is
much. Like,
you know, and that's interesting because that's what comic books are, you know, have always intended to be, right? They're for everyone.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thought that, you know, this coming out, which is, you know, it's a new way, an interesting way to approach, you know, the film side of it. But I hadn't thought about it not being for kids. Like it's different.
Yeah. It's not that I think it's bad. I thought it was extremely well done, and I agree Riddler made sense to me as well. It's just he's a fucking serial killer in this. Like he is really dark. It's not comic booky. It's not funny. It's like he's somewhere between Kevin Spacey in Seven and Jigsaw from the original Saw film. Like he's somewhere in that neighborhood, and it's just like, whoa, like well done. But I am not taking a kid to see this.
That makes sense.
So Richard asked a question: have you ever done sound for movies or smaller film projects? How is that versus games? I have done some of that. It's weird. I like it a lot. It's not as satisfying to me as working on games, because games are harder, I feel. But some of the upsides of working on films and, you know, movies and film projects. I've worked on one feature, and I've worked on a couple of short film projects. And I did sound design for a Guar record, strangely enough. So that wasn't a video game, that was a music thing, but it was still sound effects design. One of the advantages is that you always know where you are in time. So when something is happening and you have to make a sound for it, barring any editorial changes, you always know where it's going to be. It's always going to happen in sync. You don't have to worry about the player looking away, because there is no player, there is no control.
And how long really it should be, and how it should be mixed, and like, all those things are constant. Yeah.
Which is really cool. There are other challenges on film that are mostly workflow related, and, you know, integrating editorial changes as, you know, integrating EDLs as the edit changes, like that kind of stuff can be a bit of a tail chasing nightmare. But it was cool. Like it's weird. I felt it was easier, and I kind of went through a phase where I was like, I almost want to move into film, because I think it'll be easier and I can focus more on the creativity of the sound design. But I came out of it feeling like I actually like the creativity of the problem solving in games. And I think I would miss that if I ever went totally towards film. But I hope I get to keep working on them as side projects, because as little side projects where I help friends out on things they're working on, it's a lot of fun. And I learn a lot of stuff. Like, the feature I worked on, I did dialogue editorial work on that. And so I got to see the process of recording, editing, and mixing dialogue for a film. And I actually learned a handful of things that I'm now taking back to my game work from that experience. There are also some extremely talented sound designers working in the film world. And there's a lot to learn from folks like that. So I don't know. It's a very different discipline, but it's cool. I would say it's easier to go from games to linear than to go the other way. Learning how to do things non-linearly is a lot harder.
Yeah, it's always mind blowing to me, the difference between the two, and how people that come, a lot of people come from film to games, and they are often very shocked at the
Yeah.
difference. Animation is a big one, sound is a big one, where it's just a whole different world.
Yeah, can you real time?
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, I know there are people. I'm sure that's a big shock. I know nothing about VFX and animation and film, but I'm sure the fact that you can't render it offline and you have to do it while the game is running is probably a big shock to people making that jump across.
Yeah.
Um, with us, it's the idea that you don't know what the player is going to do, and you have to handle all these possibilities. And you don't get to make one sound for something; you get to make 20 versions of it. Like, there's so many things that people just don't think about.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a question in the chat that I'm curious if this is any different for audio, but do you know whether Visa support is offered for game audio roles in the US or only from a certain experience level?
Here's what I think I know about that. And I say what I think I know because I haven't been in a position where I've had to deal with it for a year or two, and I don't know if shit's changed recently. The way it worked was you would have to get what's called an H-1B visa, which is a visa that a company requests by saying, basically, we need this person. They are an expert in whatever field we're hiring them in. And you submit an application to the federal government saying, hey, we need to hire this person for this. It's somebody we can't get in the US. They're an expert. And then there's a lottery to get those visas. There's always more applicants than there are visas. So I would say it is technically offered for game audio roles. Yes. It's not explicitly offered for game audio roles, though. Like, game audio people will go into the bucket with a lot of other roles. As far as whether it's limited to an experience level, that's kind of fuzzy to me, because it really depends how well the company can argue that they need you, if that makes sense. So it's like, I can't say that only an audio director or only a lead sound designer or a senior sound designer could pull it off. They might be able to pull over a junior if that person has, or a mid-level if that person has some really specific experience that they need. Having an established work history can also help. Like, for example, let's say you were this is totally hypothetical, I'm just making it up, but let's say, for example, you were a sound person who worked at Sony in Europe, like maybe in the UK, and you wanted to move to LA and be part of the sound group at Sony Santa Monica. Even if you were mid-level, I think that would help their argument to say, well, he's worked with Sony for 3 years as a sound designer. He's familiar with our internal processes. He's familiar with our tools. He's familiar with how to do things. We need to put somebody in this role in Santa Monica. We need this person. We need a visa for this person because we don't have somebody locally that we can do without a crap ton of training. Like, you can make arguments like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's tricky, but I don't know if that's changed, and I don't know what the current allotment of H-1Bs per year is. I know it's tricky, and I only know about this because I've tried to hire a couple of people from outside of the country before, and it's a massive pain in the ass, and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So the company has to really want you.
That's the big thing I've always heard. A lot of companies just don't even consider it, right? Because, it's the cost of getting someone comparable that's already a citizen is, vastly different, right? So it's way cheaper overall.
Yeah.
But like you said, in the cases where it's like, hey, this person is an expert, we, or have, and I think that's the case where, people will make a bigger case for that kind of thing. Also, bigger companies tend to have more, they're more likely to have those roles available and have been through that process a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I said, I think doing an internal transfer within a company makes it easier. You mentioned that that he's Australian. There are a handful of game companies in Australia. I know it probably doesn't help for me to say this, but I would try to get in with some of those and get experience, because if you work for like 2K Australia, you might have an easier time trying to transfer to a 2K studio in the US if your goal is to get to the US or to Europe or Canada or wherever. That might be a good way to do it. I've known a few people in Australia. It is hard to get into game companies in the Western world from Australia. It's hard down there. I'm sorry. I know that challenge because I have a few friends down there, and I've heard about how hard it is to get work down there. Whereas Australia is kind of where I want to retire. If I can pull it off. It seems like a wonderful place based on everybody I know who lives there.
I would love to visit. It's on my list.
Yeah.
I want to avoid all those parts where things are going to try to kill me, though. But you know,
yeah, that's like 80% of the country,
right?
But,
all the
they
cool
have
parts.
Amazing spiders down there, which my wife will love.
Oh no, that is my least of favorite of things. So I don't want
the
that.
other thing, Andrew. The other thing that might help you out is do whatever contract work you can just to help build up a portfolio. That might be easier. I know that's not a great answer. But yeah, I would keep. I would apply to places like Ubisoft and such. Keep trying to get in, but also work on whatever indie stuff you can. Try to build up a portfolio. Do whatever you can as a contractor, because that might help out. It's easier to get contract work overseas than it is get an in-house job.
That totally makes. And with as work from home and remote development as the industry is becoming, it probably makes it easier. Like there's more opportunities now, than there was 10 years ago, for sure.
Well, and I'm hoping that'll open up a bit more. Like it depends on the company. Like with certain affinity, because we're an independent small company, we have a limit on what states we can hire from and what countries we can hire from in terms of remote workers. And it's not a matter of desire. Like we would love to be able to say, hey, we'll hire you no matter where you are in the world as long as you got an internet connection. But there are legal obstacles in various countries. But bigger companies like Ubisoft, like Microsoft, whatever, they're going to have less barriers simply because A, they already function in multiple countries, multiple states. B, they have bigger legal teams to handle this kind of stuff. So that I'm hopeful that will get better as the years go on and more companies will. It's like not all companies are embracing the work from home thing, but more companies are embracing it. And I'm hoping that they'll also expand their reach in terms of where they can hire people from. And that might create more opportunities for people like Andrew.
And, outsourcing, hiring someone as an outsourcer and things like that are options as well. Right. So there's more opportunities than just, hey, I'm going to be a full-time employee at X studio. Right. Like, and I think those kind of things are probably even more likely when you're looking at, outside of the country. Well, man, we've hit time. We did it.
Cool. And I think we actually completed the whole thing. So leaving stuff waiting for next time.
Yeah, no, I honestly, we've covered everything that I had in mind to cover, so I'm super stoked. But I super appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna, it's a lot of great stuff here. We've only had a handful of audio designers on here, and it's been a little while since we have. So, I super appreciate you doing it. There's some really good information here. I'm going to clip some of this stuff to put on TikTok, just so you know. And
cool. All right.
Yeah, man, I'm going to jump off and say my goodbyes. Thank you again. And I will talk to you soon.